John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Of course, covers the Eagles, covers the league nationally, FanRag Sports, NFL. He's on the Sports Bash with us now on 97.3 ESPN. And, John, welcome back, pal. I hope you had a good weekend. A lot of football coming up this week. We got the Eagles opening up training camp.
Yeah, pretty exciting. I didn't know Pete was preparing to become a 1970s adult film star.
Well, there's a lot of secrets about me, John. My life is an open book.
He found his way into the New York Mets locker room and ended up an adult film star.
This
More
is
on that
kind of
coming
a
up.
Hernandez-esque mustache back in the day.
John, I guess the first order of business would be to get into your piece at 97.3 ESPN.com, which people can read right now regarding, everybody likes to connect the dots anymore. It's like somebody got hurt, let's connect the dots automatically. Max Unger's in New Orleans. He's a center. Most likely will miss time to start the season. The Eagles have a plethora of centers. They have really 3 or maybe 4 guys, if you look at the kid Orlovsky that they signed, that many people think can play in the league, at least make a roster. The Eagles have depth at the position. So let's connect all the dots and make a nice fantasy trade. Max Unger's hurt. Jason Kelce's in play. The Eagles need a running back. What say you?
Yeah, you're right. People really, really jumped the gun on that one very, very quickly. So I felt the need to write about it and kind of point out you should pump the brakes. And I think the first thing we have to understand is how long is Unger going to be out of the lineup? Because that's the key to it all. If it's a couple weeks, the Saints are not going to be interested in giving up a valuable asset for Jason Kelce because Unger's better. And he's going to be the starter there if he plays. Now, if the surgery is really serious and there's an opportunity he could miss the entire 2017 season, yeah, then I think the Saints would visit something like that. But again, we have to get more information on how long he's going to be on the shelf. Talking about Unger, he's a very good player, and if he's going to be gone for the entire season, then you can envision sort of a Sam Bradford-like domino to fall. The desperation kicks in, and the Saints would need a starting center, and that's where a guy like Jason Kelce would be a good fit.
Yeah, now the component of this that we find interesting is the name Mark Ingram, which has kind of been floated around out there. They did sign Peterson, so I'm looking over. The guy's got a mustache. It's hilarious.
Sorry.
They did sign Adrian Peterson, right? So I guess Ingram could be, and they drafted Alvin Kamara in the draft there in the second round. So I guess there could be some possibility that Ingram gets moved. But do you think that that's a guy they want to get rid of?
No, I don't, and only if it's a necessity. They could because they have some depth at the position, as you mentioned. And I don't think we mentioned when Adrian Peterson signed with the Saints, he's not a rotational player. So the signing on the surface didn't make a lot of sense when they brought Adrian Peterson in. So when you look at it from that standpoint, you kind of understand, look, Adrian, if he's got something left, you got to play him or you don't play him. There's no sort of helping you as a third down back or a rotational guy. He's either a star or he isn't a star. And if he does play and he's a 1,300-yard rusher still, well, then, yeah, Mark Ingram is really a luxury, a redundancy. But there's a lot of ifs there. Adrian barely played last season. When he did play, he wasn't very effective. So I think the Saints would be very, very cautious about automatically assuming they're getting the all-pro running back we all think of.
If they were to do something like that, the salaries would be like a Kelce for Ingram's salary. You're not saving any money, so that's where it's a little. If you're trying to get rid of Kelce, it's because you want to
losing a little money.
Right, you're trying to wipe Kelce's money off your books. So it seems that trade really doesn't make sense for the Eagles unless, John, they don't have any faith in Wendell Smallwood, and I feel that to me is the big mystery unknown, is what are their feelings about Wendell Smallwood. And if you're throwing Mark Ingram, they're virtually the same size. I mean, they're guys who have similar skill set you would look at, and you wonder, would they make a move like that saying, we don't trust Smallwood?
Yeah, and I think they would. I mean, I don't think they have a lot of confidence in Wendell Smallwood. And it would be silly to say they would have similar confidence in a guy like Mark Ingram, who's run for 1,000 yards in this league and is still relatively young, and he's a proven back, and he's a good back. So it would be an upgrade from that standpoint. But you're right, it wouldn't help from a salary cap standpoint at all. In fact, it would hurt a little bit. So this would just be a trade to make the team better. And the fact you're looking at running back,
what a thought,
and saying outside of Darren Sproles, not a lot there right now. And that's why people are even talking about Clement, the kid from Glassboro, is almost assuredly making this team, which tells you how bad this group is right now at the running back position. So anytime you could get a player like Mark Ingram, it would help you. The problem is, again, Mark Ingram is a better asset than Jason Kelce. I don't think people realize that. I mean, Jason's a declining player. So a number of those dominoes have to fall, and they have to fall in the right direction. How long is Unger going to be out? How desperate is New Orleans? And from that standpoint, this is a trade that's not likely going to happen.
John McMullen with us, our Eagles 97.3 ESPN insider. So, John, you said Kelce, they're not giving enough credit to Kelce, or they're overvaluing what Kelce is. That said, and I know it's a different kind of snapping, but when they tried out the multiple long snappers last year, the center to me is one of those overlooked positions in football where people just take that for granted. Are you confident that Wisniewski or Mike's guy, Orlovsky, is able to come in and just hit the ground running if you move Kelce on?
Yeah, I'm confident that Wisniewski could hold down the fort, and even more so than him. The Eagles have been pretty clear behind the scenes that they think Isaac Seumalo's long-term position is center, and he's going to be the starting center of this team sooner rather than later, probably as early as next year. So that's the guy they really have earmarked for the position. Well, yeah, I mean, they're tremendously deep at the center position. Wisniewski can play. Whether he'd be as good as Kelce or not, that's up for debate. Seumalo, as I said, is much younger, and he's the future at the position. And Orlovsky's a high-level undrafted free agent and at least could be a backup in this league. So they are very, very deep at the position.
Before we had you on, if they moved on from Kelce, does Wiz or Seumalo then start this year? If they move on, is it Wisniewski or is it Seumalo you think that slides into that spot? Or choice C?
I think it's an open competition, and a lot of it depends on what happens at left guard as well. If Seumalo's starting at left guard, well, that opens up center for Wisniewski. If they want Seumalo to move to center or quickly, then you could have Alan Barber back in the starting left guard spot. So it depends how they want to go. But one thing the Eagles have done and done very well in this offseason is they built up a lot of depth, especially on the interior of the offensive line. And we talked about it a lot. And that's one of the reasons people keep looking for the other shoe to fall when it comes to Jason Kelce, because there's just too many bodies on this team to play the center and the two guard positions. So somebody's got to go. And the first name always thought about is Jason Kelce. Now, before all this Ingram stuff started to pop up, people just assumed the Eagles would want to move Kelce to save some salary cap space. But in this kind of trade, you wouldn't even be doing that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the money because we spent a good portion of the time talking about this deal or this potential deal before you came on about where that money will come from. So who are some of the cut candidates that are still out there? They do need room just to pay the rookies first and foremost, but who are some of the names? Mike brought up Michael Kendricks, maybe Brooks, Ron Brooks, DGB. Are there veteran names out there that you think the Eagles could go slash, and then get some money back?
Well, we all know, and Howie's done it numerous times in this offseason, he's renegotiated deals. He's already, for instance, Ron Brooks, a name you brought up, he's already renegotiated his deal to take less money, and that's the reason he's still on the roster. A guy like Dorial Green-Beckham, he's probably going to get cut or released. He's probably not going to be here anyway. Howie's been really, really very good at creating space that he needs, and he'll continue to do it, whether it's renegotiating deals. But there's no question the two big names that you don't expect to be on this team, really three, come September, are Ryan Matthews, Michael Kendricks, and Jason Kelce. I think between now and week one, none of those three players are going to be here.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Eagles open up. Is this a rookie camp this week? Is this just rookies only coming up this Friday?
Yeah, it's rookie mini camp, and so it'll be the draft choices, the undrafted free agents, and a few other guys 1 year, and a lot of tryout players will be in, but none of the veterans, and this is just the first step, and then you'll head into OTAs where everybody gets together.
All right. Another story that you wrote about this weekend, which might have swept under the radar because it was a Saturday and a guy that maybe many people didn't know too much about, but that's Eagles Director of College Scouting, Trey Brown. He interviewed for the Bills job, and a lot of people right off the bat said, wow, this would be a big loss for the Eagles. So tell us what you know about Brown and his role in the organization, because he's not a guy that a lot of people have heard about.
No, he's the Eagles Director of College Scouting. Actually, a lot of people do know him from the Microsoft Surface commercials that ran constantly through NFL telecasts.
So you didn't know that you knew him, but he was the guy in the commercial.
Exactly. And some people joke that got him this interview. I don't think he's a 32-year-old guy. He's very well respected. I don't think you have to worry about him getting that job, but it is a great first step for his career to get his name out there and be interviewing for a general manager position. But when you look at Buffalo and the coach and Sean McDermott, the leader in the clubhouse is Dave Gettleman's assistant, Brandon Beane in Carolina. He's probably going to get the job. They interviewed one of Ted Thompson's assistants today from Green Bay. So they've had 4 or 5 interviews to this point. Trey is one of them, but he's unlikely to get this job. That said, it's still a positive step in his career, but I think the Eagles will still have him this upcoming season.
The Bills job is one that just opened up last week, and there's a couple of candidates there. Brandon Beane. I saw Beane, and I said, are they going the Cleveland Browns route by going to snag a baseball GM and throw him into the front office in Buffalo? It seems that that's working out well in Cleveland so far. The early returns or the reviews on that job that they've done in Cleveland seem to be okay.
Well, it depends what you're – 1 in 15. I don't know, but they have, they've done the Sam Hinkie thing, and they even made the first sort of NBA-like trade in NFL history by sort of picking up the money of Brock Osweiler from Houston and garnering an extra draft pick. So they've gone about it that way. They've collected assets, and they had 3 first-round picks this year. Miles starts with number 1, Myles Garrett. They got Jabril Peppers. They got David Njoku, the tight end. So they've added significant talent, but let's be honest, unless Deshaun Kaiser hits a second-round quarterback and he becomes a franchise quarterback, it doesn't really matter because they're not going to be very good And if you look at that particular group, you mentioned Saji Brown and also Paul DePodesta, who's the baseball guy they brought over. They passed on Carson Wentz. They passed on Mitchell Trubisky. They passed on Deshaun Watson. So, if any of those guys hit, and arguably, at least to a certain degree, at least to a degree more than they thought he would, Carson Wentz has already done that. It doesn't look good. So it depends how you frame things.
Talk with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Over at FanRag Sports NFL, John writes about Eagles' third-round pick, Rasul Douglas, John, who you say is shaping up to be the most important third-round pick for the Eagles. And we talked about him before you came on, and I guess you got to be disappointed if he ends up not getting a lot of time as a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles would certainly be disappointed, and it's a tough spot to be in. I joke about when I go, this is sort of NFL draft grade season, and if you see all the graders, everybody gives out A's and B's. Everybody's got an A. Everybody's a great fit. But the reality of the situation is an average of less than 40 players a year start week one in the NFL from the draft. So not a lot of these guys are impact players right away. And the one guy the Eagles need to be more an impact player, even more so than Derek Barnett, the first-round pick, is Rasul Douglas, because they have Chris Long. They have Vinny Curry at defensive end. So Barnett has an opportunity to sort of learn, and they can bring him along slowly. That's not the case with Rasul Douglas. He's got to play because, let's face it, let's be honest, Patrick Robinson, Jalen Mills, Ron Brooks, Aaron Grimes, Dwayne Gratz, these names are not good enough. So if Rasul Douglas is not playing meaningful snaps in week one, that's bad news for the Philadelphia Eagles.
John, you also wrote at FanRag Sports NFL that the current CBA has made things tougher for undrafted players. How so?
Well, the current CBA, which came into place after the lockout in 2011, severely limited practice time, both in the off season and during the season. But when you're an undrafted guy, what you need is an opportunity to catch somebody's eye. And the less practice time you have, the less opportunity you have to do so. So NFL coaches today kind of sort of lean on the status quo, and that's sort of pedigree. And obviously first-round picks are going to get the benefit of the doubt. They always are, but even draft picks as a whole. So in the old days, you could come in and sort of outplay a 6th or 7th round pick, and coaches would be like, hey, we found something here. But today it's more difficult than ever just because you don't have the time to sort of shine in the off season.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece here, right? Because a lot of teams, the Eagles used to really try to find these diamonds in the roughs. You know, we talked about the pipeline of centers. Jamal Jackson, undrafted. Hank Fraley, undrafted. Kind of leading to the article that I wrote last week about Tyler Orlovsky. Don't be surprised if you saw another guy undrafted, because somebody was saying, look, if you got to rely on an undrafted rookie free agent center, what does that say about your team? And you look at history and say, well, there's a lot of guys. The undrafted center seems to be a position that is typical that you find in the undrafted market.
Yeah, but if you think about offensive linemen, it's really a perfect illustration with those guys, because obviously if you play the offensive line, the only way you can stand out is by hitting people. Well, if you think about the current rules, you can't hit at all in the off season. There's no contact in OTAs. There's no contact in rookie minicamp or mandatory minicamp. You can't put on the pads until August, and even then, there's no more two-a-days. There's only one practice a day and one walkthrough. So there's just less time and less ability for a player like Orlovsky, who was rated very, very highly by a lot of scouts, probably the third best center in this draft. he just doesn't have a lot of time to open Doug Peterson's eyes, and it's a shame. And it's sort of an unintended consequence, because obviously veteran players and high-profile rookies, they're thrilled that they don't have to go through all those difficult practices. But for guys on the lower end, it's hurt them.
Check out that piece at JF McMullen on Twitter. John McMullen, of course, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the Eagles, and gets his NFL national columns at FanRag Sports NFL. He joins us each day at this time on the Sports Bash. John, all right, man. Friday is the open of rookie camp for the Eagles. We look forward to that and all the football leading up to it this week.
Hey, thank you, guys.